Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. And what I want to do is I want to wrap up that ATC200 low compression engine today. So we found two problems. The first one was the valve. And the second problem was the stuck rings on the piston. This is the piston that was in it. This is the intake, says in. And it's really pretty clean. So I thought this thing may have inhaled a whole load of dirt, and it really didn't. If you inhale a lot of dirt, you really scrape the heck of this, this thing up bad. And this is an example of a piston that did that. See the way it's all kind of torn up on this side? So that wasn't its problem. The exhaust, you got this little burr here, but the exhaust isn't that bad either. I think they might have had thin oil in this thing and just overheated the heck out of it and seized the rings up that way. By the way, these rings aren't coming off for love nor money. I think I'm going to pop it into a mayonnaise jar. Someone recommended acetone and something else to soak it in. I have some diesel floating around, some old diesel. So what I'm going to do is throw this into a mayonnaise jar with some old diesel and leave it there for until I need to rebuild another ATC200. Then I'll pop it out and see if I can't get the rings off. So hopefully that works. In the meantime, I think you guys remember a really smoky 200S I had, and I did that rebuild on the top end. Well, this is the piston out of it, and you guys could see what happened. They didn't have an air filter in it, and it kind of tore up the cylinder a little bit. The rings, not really, but it really ate the bore alive, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the rings from that piston. Boy, this is really cheap rebuild, eh? I have a set of new rings, but I don't want to waste them. Anyway, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to use the head with the bad valve in it, and I'm going to put the whole thing together. Some of you might be saying, why the heck would you do that, Harvey? You got plenty of spare parts. That may be true, but not everybody doing this kind of work gets the parts that they need, right? Quite honestly, I'm sure I can walk around and dig up a whole engine to put right onto that frame, even a correct engine. But I'm deliberately going through this rebuild, and I'm doing it for two reasons. First of all, for you all to see what using second rate or second condition parts will do, and for myself, so I can get an idea that when I'm buying one of these and I see certain characteristics, what am I really buying? What kind of condition might the engine be in on the inside? And, I'm kind of buying it, If it's got that distinctive little pop out the exhaust, I'll know that the intake valve is too tight or the seat is all worn down. If it's popping out the exhaust and I hear the intake valve clattering, I'll know that, or popping out the intake a little bit, and I hear that intake valve clattering, I'll know, I probably have a bad seat, a well-worn seat, or a valve problem in there. Anyway, so I'm going to give this a shot. Stay tuned. I think I'll show a few pieces of it, maybe the piston with the rings on it, maybe, the reassembly. Right now, I'm kind of in the cleanup mode. Best place to start with that is tearing up a clean white t-shirt so that you can see what's going on. I'm using, the real high-class stuff from Wally World. And, as I spray stuff off, it's dripping on that t-shirt so it doesn't get into the groundwater and then my well. So that's what I'm up to. I do recommend wearing gloves, though I'm not a glove type person. Over the years, my fingertips are not as sensitive as they used to be. So if I wear gloves, I'm I can't feel anything I'm touching. So I kind of have to go without. If you're a young person, I truly, or anybody other than me, I truly recommend wearing gloves because you don't want your fingertips to get numb like my fingertips. So I cleaned it up and I put the rings back on, and I cleaned all the grooves in the piston so the rings move easily. I just got to line them up. They say you shouldn't put piston rings directly over the wrist pin. And they say you shouldn't be exactly at one of these oiling holes. You should be slightly off from that. So, and you should stagger the gaps in all the rings. So I'm going to do all that and start assembling things. Remember, you got to make sure that when you put the wrist pin in, you put plenty of oil on it, right? You don't want to start up dry. You want to make sure there's plenty of oil on the piston and in the bores. You put things together, plenty of oil where the cam goes, because first of all, you don't want to start dry. Secondly, if there's any particles, if there's oil there, the particle is still a very bad particle, but you have a better chance of floating it away and getting it into the sump and getting it away from the surface. Without oil on there, you just have a dry particle grinding in each time everything goes. So the assembly, I mean, not all that exciting. I'm going to bring the engine over, put the wrist pin through, put the clip back on. Right, then the cylinder is in. By the way, see that little in? That should be aimed at the intake valve, so make sure you do that. So that's not all that exciting. Then you slide the bore over the piston, feeding these in. Sometimes a little hard, though they seem to have a pretty good taper down in here. So last time I did it, no big deal. Right, make sure your gasket surfaces are nice and clean. I'm really doing a cheap rebuild, so I'm going to take a look at the gasket surfaces and kind of patch them up with some of that former gasket stuff. That'll be the base. The compression head gasket looks actually pretty good. And I'm going to just start putting it back together again. Then we'll bench test it for compression. I don't want to do a leak back test because I'm almost afraid to see what it says. Maybe I'll turn the camera back on for when I set up the timing. Okay, tubers, here we are. It's timing time, and you see how that's lined up. You got the T, and then you got the little line there, right? I think you guys could see that quite well. Wait a minute, let me go straight. So there you are. So you're perfectly lined up. And then up here, right, you see that dot, and you see how it's not lined up. So what I have to do is kind of crab walk the chain back a little bit, one notch. You really got to pay attention to your timing, because if you time it wrong, all the work you did was for naught. The engine's not going to start. Or if it does start, it's going to be very quirky. Or if you're really off, you're going to smack up the valves. That's a very bad thing. By the way, as you're aligning this, that right there also has to be toward as close to the top as possible. Notice the pin is out. I took it out and put it someplace safe so it doesn't fall into the crankcase. Okay, so the engine is put back together again, and I just want to tell you guys, do not try this at home, but I'm going to hit the compression release. You guys can see the compression gauge. This is dry, so to speak, though the engine's just been rebuilt. Somehow it makes the drill smell funny. What do you guys think? Anyway, so I don't know, could you guys see this? I got about 115 out of it, which is a little better than it was before. You know what? I'm going to try a wet test, and let's see what that one does. Just finished the wet test, and you guys could see I got 125 pushing to 130. I'm thinking this engine's going to be okay. I was going to bench start it, but you know what? I think I'm going to put this right on the three-wheeler. I think it's going to run. I didn't see anything bad belching out the intake. You know, normally if they're leaking, you could, you know, see little whiffs. I didn't see any of that. I hope you guys didn't either when we had the camera on it. So I'm going to end this video here. I got to tell you, I think this engine's going to be okay. It was kind of a sketchy rebuild, but hopefully the next time you see it, it is on the quad or on the three-wheeler, the old U-Haul three-wheeler, and we're running it around in circles. While I was in there, I did a lot of good things. I made sure the firing timing was just right. You know, obviously cleaned up the rings, put a different cylinder in there, put used rings in, but they were cleaned up, honed the bore. You know, the timing chain is now proper. It's tight. It's not loose. So I'm thinking this engine, though it's going to be far from perfect, I think it might just be a decent runner. I guess we'll find out after I put the whole thing back together again, which is quite a bit of work. It always seems that it's harder to put the engines back on than to take them off. Anyway, in the meantime, I want to thank everybody for dropping by to watch and comment and subscribe. Remember, feet down, heads up, and get out there and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.